All right, with the NBA draft now set, I believe it begins 4 weeks from last night. Players no longer able to go back to college. This is what our big board looks like, with Cooper Flagg on top, followed by a bunch of other one-and-done freshmen, the two Rutgers kids. You got VJ Edgecombe from Baylor, the #1 shooting guard, followed by Trey Johnson, also a shooting guard. Let's get our two shooting guards in here. We've got Adam Finkelstein and Kyle Boone. We're not going to hit those top five. We've talked about them a lot. Let's talk about some of the other intriguing prospects. And start at number 6 with Con Knippel out of Duke. How do you evaluate him at times, Adam? Because he played on the same team as the best player in this draft, one of the best players we've seen in a draft in the last decade or so. And at times, his stars shine just as bright as Cooper's.
Yeah, specifically in that ACC tournament when Cooper went down with the injury, Con stepped up, and you got a snapshot of what he might have been if he didn't play on the same team with Cooper Flagg all season long. But the reason why NBA executives really like him is because of his ability to blend in with other good players, which is what we saw the vast majority of the season. And that speaks to his ability to acclimate to an NBA style of play when everybody on the floor is going to be a very good player. So when you look at somebody like Philadelphia, who's got the 3rd pick but has championship aspirations if, and obviously that's a big if everybody can be healthy, that's why you're starting to see Con Knippel get a little bit of traction even higher up these mock drafts, because he's someone who can step in and make an impact right away, even if the perceived upside, or the ceiling, if you will, isn't necessarily at the same level as someone like Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe. It's because he can step in right away and impact winning.
Yeah, and obviously when you talk about ceiling and upside, Ace Bailey potentially at number 3 in this draft certainly sounds exciting, Fink, if you're picking for the Philadelphia 76ers at number 3. But I think the value you would get in potentially selecting a Con Knippel at number 3, a little bit underrated, right? Like maybe doesn't have the same type of ceiling, the same all-star potential. But you know you're going to get a guy who is a really productive player. He was above 40% on three-pointers last season, 90th percentile on jump shots, really good finisher around the basket. And I think for Philly specifically at number 3, they have Tyrese Maxey in place. They have Jared McCain. They already have a kind of a core built in that, they're not looking to necessarily swing for the fences. If they can get a guy who they know and feel confident about is going to be a really good NBA player pairing next to a stellar backcourt that's already there, I think there's a lot of value with there and specifically with Con Knippel.
Couple of Duke guys in the top 6, and 3 of them likely lottery picks at this point, but Cam Malawach not the top center. That goes to Derek Queen, who is ranked number 10, just ahead of Malawach. Adam, why is Queen, who, when you just look at them on a basketball court, Queen does not look like the prototypical center. I mean, not a ton of athleticism that jumps off the page at you. I know he's skilled, but why do we have Queen higher than Malawach?
Well, it's based on the archetype, right? And to your point, Chris, Derek Queen is an Alperen Sengun type of big man. He's not the athletic rim runner, but that means he gives you an ability to play through him. You can throw him the ball in the half court, and he can facilitate because he's an outstanding ball handler for his size. He's a very good passer, and I know I sound like a broken record, but if the shooting ever comes along, it is going to unlock even higher level upsides. But the reason why people like him is because when the game slows down, he can be someone who can create some offense for you, whether that's as a ball handler or a passer. And a lot of the other bigs in this class do not have that type of weapon, especially when the game slows down. So does he lose some things athletically? 100%, but he makes up for it with his skill, his feel for the game, and I think he's got maybe the best hands in the draft.
Yeah, and I think having Queen at number 1 among centers in this class kind of reflects the philosophy that we value at CBS Sports, which is skill and fill. Kaman Malawach is a guy who's obviously going to be a lob threat. He's going to be a shot blocker. He's 7'2" with a 7'6" wingspan. But Queen, what he lacks for, I think, in terms of athleticism, he makes up for with his skill. He's an 85th percentile rim finisher last season as a true freshman at Maryland. Versatile as a playmaking hub from the big man position. That's something you really don't get in this class, aside from maybe a Danny Wolf. He can put the ball on the deck and drive as well. We saw in the NCAA tournament, he hit a game winner, creating from the top of the key and attacking the basket. So that type of inside-out versatility, I think, is very valuable at the center position in the current NBA. It's why Queen is a top 10 prospect for us in this year's class.
All right, moving down into the teens, we find someone who has been on the rise, someone that even if you're a big college basketball fan, you might not have really noticed because of where he played. It's Cedric Coward. Why, Kyle, has he been on the rise the last couple of months?
Yeah, he's had a really strong pre-draft process, and just the quick timeline here. Began his career at the Division III level, played at Eastern Washington, transferred to Washington State, and put his name in the NBA draft after 6 games at Washington State, committed to Duke, and all the while his draft stock just steamed all the way up to a point where earlier this week he decided he's going to stay in the NBA draft. He's 6'5", measured with a 7'2" wingspan at the combine when we were in Chicago. He's a career 39% three-point shooter. He's built like a brick. I think the projectable game for him on both ends of the floor just makes a lot of sense. I project him to be a top 25 pick in this class, and obviously that would have been a tough decision for him staying in college and going to Duke or staying in the NBA draft. He's decided to stay, expecting him now to be a first-round pick in this year's draft.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Coward is certainly trending in the right direction. He made a huge impact at the combine, ended up not going to Duke. But what we've learned since is his decision to stay in the draft was really almost made before the combine even took place. You talk to Duke and you see where their recruiting efforts started to refocus on other wings. We find out that even some of the workouts before we got to Chicago were influencing Coward to stay in the draft. So it's not just about what we saw at that combine. It's about that when he visits school, when he visits these programs, he's getting very positive feedback. And those are the pieces of information that are absolutely imperative in this decision-making process. When you look at some of the players who went back to school yesterday on that last day allowed, and you do a little digging why, it's because their feedback in those meetings when they travel to visit franchises wasn't anywhere near as optimistic as a guy like Cedric Coward was getting. That's why he's in the draft. That's why we believe that he is continuing to trend up the draft.
One of those players who was in the draft that decided to come back to college is Alex Condon, going back to the defending national champion Florida Gators. The most outstanding player in the tournament, Walter Clayton Jr., is in the 20s, the mid-20s, at number 26. Kyle, why, with some of these players that we had on our big board going back to college, why hasn't he made more of a jump, I guess, because of what he did in the tournament?
Yeah, I think certainly he's gotten a bump, Chris. I think if you look at our big board before the NCAA tournament versus now, it's significantly higher. In fact, we had him projected as a late second-round pick. So, this is still a bump, maybe not as high as what we had expected coming off the NCAA tournament championship for Florida. I think this is in part because he's a little bit undersized. He's more of a tweener guard. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be a starting caliber player in the NBA, but he's a dynamic scorer, and that's the foundation for why we really like Clayton. We still have him as a top 30 player, expecting him to be a first-round pick. There's a wide range of outcomes for him in this year's draft. I think somewhere between 20 and 35 would make a lot of sense. But when you watched Walter Clayton Jr., Superman reincarnate, taking the Gators to the NCAA tournament championship, I think the scoring ability, both off the ball, making plays as a lead guard, there's a lot to like here. I think as an NBA team, maybe as a microwave scorer, someone who can add depth to your backcourt.
Walter Clayton Jr. is one of, if not the best shooters in this draft. He's right there with Trey Johnson and a couple of select others, Con Kneppel. And when you canvass the NBA executives and decision makers, you will find a fairly wide range of opinions on his stock. What's representative of that is that at CBS Sports, we have a pretty wide-ranging opinion of his stock. Myself, I would start to think about him in the late lottery, and if he's still on the board at 25, I would absolutely jump on him. I don't think that a shooter of this magnitude who's got this type of gravity and can also get on-ball reps, I think to me that is a surefire pro. And when you get to about 25, not everybody who gets picked in the late first round ends up to be a surefire pro. So if one is available, you have to take him right away. Walter Clayton has a very clear role in the modern day NBA. That's why, to me, he is perhaps a little bit higher. But again, this is a good representation of, I think, the market on Walter Clayton. Some people are more skeptical. Some people are more optimistic. So you're really getting, I think, a good view of what the market is for him right now.
NBA draft 4 weeks away. It'll take place at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Full big board, 1 to 60 over at CBSSports.com. Meantime, at 247sports.com, an article ranking the top 25 most impactful transfers after the draft deadline. And also subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube page, which I believe just celebrated its 1 billionth view this week.